Hello, everyone, and welcome back to what is already our last track session of Big Data Days 2023. I know everybody is disappointed because we could go on for days and hours, but it's really time to start introducing our last set of speakers. And for this last session, I have a very special one. We're going to be talking about organizational culture transformation, and especially the challenges and benefits of adopting a data culture. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you today Suzannah Hicks, who is presenting from the US today. Suzannah is currently the data strategist and scientist for the International Association of Privacy Professionals. She established and leads the data team at the IAPP, where she's responsible for preparing and leading the annual data team roadmap, budgetary and resource planning, and other strategic efforts in cooperation with the IOP Chief Information Officer. Suzannah leads the development and implementation of the organizational data strategy, including establishment of data governance policies and oversight. Additionally, she's currently completing her doctorate in organizational development. Her current research is regarding organizational culture transformation and change, specifically challenges and benefits of adopting an organizational data culture. And I'm quite sure she's going to share some of that today with us. Suzannah, it's your first time at Big Data Days, so I would like to welcome you. I'm so happy that you decided to participate.
Thank you so much, and I'm very happy to be here. This has been a wonderful conference, so much to take away, so many nuggets. We come to these conferences hoping that we'll get one or two, and there's been far more than that to take with us. As was just stated, I'm currently the data strategist and data scientist at the IAPP, but my current research is about organizational transformation to a data culture. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about what it is, some of the benefits, the challenges, etc. And we're going to talk about maybe some recommendations at the end about things that you can take back to your organization and put into place. So with that, we'll get started. So what is it? That's where we need to start, right? What is an organizational data culture? Before we get into talking about the benefits, the challenges, we really need to understand what we mean by this. From a purely definition perspective, this is the definition of a data culture. But think about any culture, any organizational culture, the cultures at your organization. As you know, it is typically organizational wide. It's a common set of beliefs, behaviors, practices, etc. In the terms of a data culture, it's that, but it's how we think about data and what we do with it across the organization. And a data culture is, as we'll see, has many benefits, but challenges as well. But it really can be a boon to your organization if you can get it going. So what is it? Well, it starts with the data. You do have to have high quality and reliable data. So the data integrity is very important. We do need to start there. We also need to really enhance our data literacy for all our employees, not keeping that data knowledge.
I'm sorry for interrupting you for a second, but your slide is still
not keeping that knowledge within the data team only, but it's got to go across the organization. We must really reach out to our other employees and promote data literacy.
Suzannah, are you?
Yes.
So I'm sorry for intervening for one quick second, but your slide is still at the first cover slide, so it's not moving with it. So
it's not moving. All right, let me do something else. Give me one moment. It's very strange. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's happening.
No worries. That can happen. It's
still at the front.
Yeah, first slide so far. Yeah. So might be easiest if you do the share screen button at the bottom.
Yeah. I'll stop and reshare. Now, on the front, and
it's coming.
Did it change?
So now we're now on the second slide. Perfect.
All right. My apologies. This is my first big data days, so apologies for a little technical glitch. So I'm not going to go over everything I said. We'll just look at these slides and then move on. So we talked about what it is. This is the definition. As I said, it's across organization, how we think about things, but in this regard, it's about how we think about data and a common set of beliefs, values, etc. That actually the purpose is to enable data-driven decision-making. So what does it look like? Again, it starts with the data. We have to be able to trust our data. It must be reliable, must have high integrity. We also need organizational data literacy. We can't keep the knowledge just within the data or tech teams. It's got to go across the org. So we're going to talk a little bit more about data literacy. That's been a theme throughout this conference, and it's very important. Data leadership from the executive team. In terms of what a data culture is, this is really paramount. You must have leadership from the top down, and there must be commitment there to really adopt a data culture. It does require a shift in thinking about how we think about data. And we must start to think about data as a business asset. You know, there are several businesses that actually have data on their revenue documents with a actual monetary value associated with it. I'm not suggesting that we all need to do that, but we do need to start thinking about data as more than just reports and metrics and numbers. It really is a business asset. And then finally, it's data-driven decision-making across the organization. Sometimes this is understood as evidence-based management. They're basically the same thing. The idea is you're using data to help you make decisions rather than just intuition or your experience, etc. So with that said, let's talk for just a moment about what a data culture is not, because this is very important. So what is it not? Well, it's not a highly invested tech and data environment. You can throw as much money at this as you want, but it does not equate to having a data culture. Additionally, you can have the best trained professionals within your data team, and they are necessary, don't get me wrong, you must have them, but they do not equate to a data culture. Same with a robust data infrastructure. You can have the most, the greatest invested in commitment infrastructure, wonderful data lakes and data marts and microservices, whatever have you, whatever your infrastructure is. But again, that is not a data culture. And buying a BI tool isn't going to get you there either. Finally, within your data team, perhaps you are using all of these four things. You've got a great, you've invested in the environment. You have skilled data professionals. You've got this great infrastructure that you spent time building. You have a wonderful tool, and now you're able to do, you being, let's say, the data professionals, you're doing advanced analytics or machine learning. That's great, but that is not an organizational data culture. That is, it's good work by all means, but it is not a data culture. This may surprise you, but the number one reason data initiatives fail, and this is from a very reliable study that has been peer reviewed and it's been reported several years in a row, 91% of companies report that the lack of a data culture is the impediment to successful data programs and initiatives. We have all been, if we as data professionals, been in that seat where we've built what we think is the greatest thing out there, but it ends up being put on the shelf and the business doesn't use it. That comes down to a lack of data culture. So that may be surprising to some of you, but this is across industry. And this is from reports that talk to CEOs, not just data professionals. So let's talk about the benefits. There are significant organizational benefits to adopting a data culture. Again, these statistics are from peer-reviewed very well regarded studies that have shown that those companies that have successfully adopted a data culture do see increases in productivity, profitability, operational efficiency, and overall growth. It's amazing if you can get it, if you can really get your org to adopt this data culture. What it is, your organization will benefit tremendously. This may surprise you. There are actual direct benefits to employees. It enlists trust in your employees across the organization because you're creating an environment where your employees are more likely to speak up because what they're saying is being backed up with data. It fosters trust and empowerment for your employees, and it empowers the employees to make recommendations rather than perhaps hold back, not maybe say what they think, but because they've got data to back it up, there is significant increase in employee satisfaction and trust across the organization. Of course, there's also benefits to decision making. We're not guessing. We're making decisions with data to back us up. As I just mentioned, it provides an equitable decision-making environment where everyone at the table has an equitable voice in what's being talked about. And if it's being used, if evidence-based management and data-driven decision-making are being removed, we're removing HIPPO decision-making. For those of you who are not familiar with HIPPO decision-making, it's something that's commonly referred, it's highest paid person's opinion. So the highest paid person's opinion in the room ultimately makes the decision. If you have truly adopted a data culture and data-driven decision-making, we remove that obstacle. So what are some commonly reported challenges? And this again is from several studies, but this is also directly from my own research, and it's across the board. Typically, organizations right now, and we're all facing this challenge, right? That's why we're here to talk about this, because all organizations are struggling right now. We have a challenging data environment. We've probably got poor data, lots of manual processes. Your teams are working in data silos, so your data is not integrated. People do not understand how the data is being used or prepared, and there's certainly the lack of clarity in how decisions are being made at all levels. They don't trust the data. They don't trust how the decisions are being made, and we're not getting training. Ultimately, it comes down to lack of data leadership. We see these common challenges, like I said, across industry in all organizations that are struggling with this problem. So what are some common components that are needed for a data culture? Well, the first thing, like I said before, it starts with data. You have to be able to trust the data. Think about the data at your own organization. Is it truly accessible? Is it trusted? That is work that must be done. Again, broad organizational data literacy. We've got to bring in teaching in order to understand and not keep that knowledge only in the tech and data teams. It must be across the organization. There should be an open and trusting nature to the organization as well. And sometimes this comes after the adoption of a data culture. It is sometimes a byproduct, but it also can be an accelerator if it already exists. This is common with any transformation. We've all been in large org-wide transformational efforts, and without clear objectives, they typically are not very successful. So we do need clear objectives around the data and the efforts that we're making here. Again, going up to the open and trusting, you want people to be curious. Again, not just the data people across the organization. If we teach them about data, and we improve our data literacy, we will open up this inquisitive nature of our employees, and they will begin to ask questions that they perhaps would not have asked prior to understanding. We must have, every organization can't do this without the data pros. We've got to have data scientists, data architects, data engineers, data analysts. We do need the skilled people, but not just in the data team. We need data advocates across the organization, and that typically comes with data literacy. The more employees across the organization understand, then you will start to develop these data advocates across the organization that can help you spread the message. It's very important. This is a common theme. I've said it's almost on every slide. Strong data leadership from the top is absolutely paramount. Without it, it's going to be extremely challenging. And ultimately, you get down to data-driven decision-making, which is the goal. That's what we're trying to get to, is data-driven decision-making. So what's it actually look like? Well, if you've got a data culture, you've done this work, you're in there, what does it actually look like when you're looking at it? Well, data will be, what you'll see is that data is embraced from the top of the organization down to the very bottom, across all teams, across all work streams. Everyone is embracing data and using it to the benefit of the organization. And it's accessible. This has been a theme throughout this conference. Free the data, data democratization. We need to have, it needs to be available and consumable by all the teams. Data literacy, common theme. We've talked about it now. I've mentioned it several times. It must be a priority. We've got to teach folks across the organization. It must be identified as a priority by our leadership, and it's got to be reinforced with employee training and learning that is available. We must not just talk about it. We actually have to provide the opportunity and the resources necessary for our employees to learn about data. Your data has to be aligned with your business strategy. And it must become a core part of that business strategy. Without that alignment, data will continue to be, adopting a data culture will continue to be very challenging if we do not tie it directly to the business strategy. Back to the data, has to be consistent and trusted. If the employees don't trust the data, they're certainly not going to use it to make recommendations. We will see innovation. Once you adopt a data culture, you will see more innovation. People will be open, they'll be transparent. Hopefully they're excited, they're talking about it, and you'll see more innovation that goes along with that inquisitive and curious nature that we've talked about previously. And then ultimately, you've made that paradigm shift where data is considered a business asset and it's treated as such. That is a big paradigm shift in the way that most executives think about data. There's a misconception that data is charts and just metrics and KPIs, and it's not. It's far beyond that, and it must be seen as a business asset and treated as such. But guess what? It's hard. It's really, really hard. It's hard to even express how hard it is. But let's talk about why it's hard. So inherently, organizational cultural transformation, any org transformational project is inherently difficult. We know this because we've been part of them. And changing a culture is incredibly hard. Again, think about the culture at your own organization. Think about what makes your organization unique. That thing that makes your company your company. What is that culture? Now imagine trying to change that. That's a very big challenge to take up. And that's exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about a culture change. It's adopting, but adopting means that we must change, and cultural change is very, very hard. Like I said, it's a foundational shift in how the organization thinks about data. That's incredibly difficult to change the way people think. Incredibly hard, very challenging. Again, it must come from the top. The leadership must commit to this, and they must change the way that they're making decisions, and it must become transparent. We must see the leadership making this change to a data-driven decision-making model, and that has to be communicated out to the organization. We're shifting trust, again, very difficult. And now we're looking at the data, which we must trust that data. That's why we have to trust the data, rather than intuition-based or purely experience-based intuition, which is how a lot of organizational decisions are made, the really important ones in particular. And it is a multi-year commitment. And that getting that commitment across several years is also incredibly challenged. You've got the organization from the leadership down has got to commit to working on these changes and sticking to it when it gets hard, because it will get hard. So finally, what can you do? Well, again, talk to your leadership. Try to get a commitment. Show them this deck. Talk to them about what are the incredible benefits that the organization will garner if they do indeed adopt a data culture. Talk to them how it's going to increase productivity and profitability, the things that get, like your finance officer, it's going to get their attention, right? But it's also going to talk to your HR team about employee satisfaction. We're going to improve employee satisfaction and engagement. And then decision-making, we're going to make better decisions. So talk to the leadership first and get that commitment. And then once you do that, work to define and write out an actual data strategy with goals and objectives. But again, you must make sure that it is aligned to the business strategy. Otherwise, the executives will not maintain that commitment. Once you have that, we need to talk about it. You need to talk to the directors. It must go beyond just the leadership and the data team who has taken the time and put the work in building this, data strategy with specific goals and objectives and a roadmap and all these things that we do. We've got to talk about it to the entire organization, and we must show that that there is commitment and buy-in from the leadership. Finally, you've got to invest in data literacy. This is so key. I was listening to one of the keynotes yesterday by Jordan Moore, who talked about literacy. This cannot be overstated. We've got to train our employees about data. We cannot keep it within these data silos. And one of the biggest ways to remove the data silos is to have data with good integrity, that is trusted, that is accessible, and is being utilized and consumed by employees that have been trained to understand what that data can do for them. And then ultimately, we're changing how decisions are made. By doing all of these things, getting the commitment from the top down, change will happen. You will move to a data-driven decision-making model at all levels, not just at the top where it does need to start, but at all levels, all the way down to the operational managers who have to make quick decisions every day. It will be completely transformative to your organization with vast benefits that will be seen almost immediately. So thank you very much. We kind of blew through that quickly. But I'd love to see if anyone has any questions, and I'd be happy to talk a little bit more about it. And we have plenty of time.
Absolutely, Suzannah. Well, let me first of all say that I thought this was an excellent presentation. I really liked your part around how to establish a data culture, because that's, I think, the key question everyone is looking for. We did indeed see quite a number of questions coming up. So if it's okay, I would like to moderate them. I'm going to get started. I can let me project them on the screen as well for everyone. So first question is from Cesara. On one slide, there is the data accessibility ambition. And on the other slide, there is the data privacy obligation. How do you properly balance those two?
Well, we're working for the IAPP, where we train folks in data privacy and certify. I'm in a unique position to be able to talk about that. Part of my role is to assist our data privacy officer with our internal privacy organization, our operations. It's a very, very important question, and it's difficult. What I've found is that you must have a strong data privacy officer who has strong data literacy. What I found is that with our DPOs, they know the law, but they don't know how to do it. It's the data professionals that put it into practice. And the way we've done it here is we follow privacy by design. If you're not familiar with the tenets and principles of privacy by design, I highly recommend that you go and learn about those. There's tons of resources. You can easily Google it and learn about it. But it's all about putting privacy first. It is possible to make your data accessible without exposing your customers or your employees PII. It is absolutely possible. And we're seeing it now more and more in enterprise applications who are partly prompted by the regulations that are rolling across the globe. The GDPR in particular really put a fire under people. But even Google, Google Analytics 4 is much more privacy centric than Universal. The changes are happening, but you still have to do it internally. It is possible to balance the two, but part of that is the data literacy within the privacy team at the organization. That's where it's going to start. I have a biweekly meeting with our DPO that is on the books all the time, and we're constantly talking. I would recommend that to start with, to see where they are in their data literacy and how you can help move that forward.
Yeah. If I can add to that, or if I can ask a question that is not on the moderator, but I'm always wondering if you look at data privacy officers or people who go for learning more about that, are those typically technology people who need to learn about the law, or are these people with a legal background that start to learn about technology? What's your view?
In my experience, privacy officers are lawyers.
Okay.
They're the folks that they understand the law, but they don't know how to do it. Well, on the flip side of that, I don't know all the intricacies of the law. I certainly know more than I did before I started working here, but I can help them learn how to do it. So you have to work together. You must have someone in that privacy role who really understands what you can and cannot do, who understands all the frameworks that are needed to test procedures to see if they're protecting your customer, particularly your customer and your employee PII. But they don't know how to do it. They're going to be looking to the data professionals and the technology folks to help them do it. And this is something that I feel very, very passionate about this. We are training data professionals. Everywhere you look, there are programs being stood up to turn out new data scientists, new data analysts, and engineers and architects. There's data programs everywhere, but they're not talking about or teaching data privacy along with it. That we need to change that. Not only do the data privacy officers need to become data literate, we need to start talking to the data professionals about data privacy, because it's not going away. It's not going away. It's going to become more stringent, and it's going to change how we do our work.
Absolutely, fully agree there. Good. So let me go to the next question. The next question is from Harper Mitchell. Often there's an argument in between data transparency versus data sensitivity. How can we tackle such arguments in between different groups of people?
Can you read that again? I want to make sure I understand the question.
The question is, often there are arguments in between data transparency versus data sensitivity. How can we tackle such arguments in between the different groups of people?
Some of that is going to be who has access. A lot of that can be framed by working closely with your security teams and accessibility and who has access to what data. There are several organizations that I know that will use whatever their CRM is, and they don't set up access-based controls, and everybody can go in and get data, whatever they want about whoever they want. That has to stop. You must have built out security personas so that we're controlling who has access to what data. In most cases, to do data analysis, you don't need to know who the person is. So don't show them that data. That data does not need to be in the hands of everyone. They don't need to know who it is. They don't need to know where they live in order to do the analysis that they're looking at. They may need to know their country, but they certainly don't need their street address. So again, that is a privacy issue, but you can work with your security and infrastructure teams to build out access-based controls to enable them to have access to the data that they need without having too much access.
Yeah. One of the previous speakers was talking about data masking. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and you can do that, absolutely. Pseudonymization, you can de-identify. There's any number of things you can do. You can certainly just remove that name field. We can go in, we can put in randomized characters to put in there. And there's many tools that will do this for you. Most CRMs now come with data anonymization and masking capabilities within there. But I'll harken back to literacy. If you don't understand why you need those things, you're likely not to use them. You may not even be aware that you already have the ability built into the tools that you use.
Good, very good. Let me move to the next question. Is also from Harper. It's a follow-up question. Also another question. How can organizations overcome the challenge of change management and resistance to new data-driven processes or tools?
That's a really hard question. It is incredibly difficult. I'm facing it right now, if you want to know the truth. It's incredibly difficult, and I don't know. We've got to keep talking about it. I mean, I'm just being honest now. You have to keep just plugging away, showing the benefits. Don't get discouraged. Get those data advocates in the other teams, push data literacy, talk to your HR team about setting up lunch and learns about what data is and what it can do for the teams. Most teams think that the data they have is all that they need. There's probably other data that they need that they don't even know exists. So start from the ground, but you've got to talk to your leadership too. You've got to convince your leadership that they must commit to making this transformation important. Now, it's never going to be the number one priority at any organization. That's just not going to happen. We're naive if we think that, oh, this organization is going to devote all its energy and its number one priority is going to be to adopting a data culture. You're going to have to do it opportunistically. As the opportunity arises, try to get in the room. That's important. You need to be in the room and show them the power of the data. If you can get the organization to start thinking about it as a business asset, that is a huge first step. Yeah. That to me is between data literacy. That's how you start to move the needle with the leadership, is start them thinking differently about the data. Explain to them it's not KPIs and metrics. First of all, that's reporting, that's not analytics, but more importantly, that's not treating the data as an asset. And you need to treat it like any other business asset that you have. That's where I would start. That's where I have started.
I think that's great advice. The next question, and they keep coming in, so you're hitting I think a sensitive nerve, is from Timothy Joseph Decano. And he's asking, I think it's in line with the discussion we're currently having, is how do we overcome the challenge of senior management that may find data tools a challenge to their practice when they're working since the firm was put up? So probably the difference between
founder syndrome,
power.
Right? Yeah. It's the founder syndrome. And say you're working for a company that's been around 20, 30 years and that's been doing great, successful every single year. And you've got the founder who's your CEO and has been making decisions for years without relying on all this data.
Yeah.
That's a tough nut to crack. It really is. You have to do it strategically. You have to show them the benefits, what got us here sometimes isn't what's going to get us to where we want to be. Maybe the message is, yeah, we've been very successful. You've done a great job, but we could be more successful, right? Yep. Show them what are the added benefits, but it is incredibly incredibly challenging. You've got to get that leadership, and without that leadership commitment, it's very difficult.
Yeah, especially I think indeed if you see a CEO founder kind of relationship, then that's even maybe more difficult.
For sure.
Good. Let's move to the next one, which I also think is a very good question for a bit of debate. In your opinion, do you think that tech giants like the Google and Amazons of this world play a role in helping organizations in adopting a data culture?
I think they can. I think they absolutely can. I think I'll use Google. I already used Google as an example. I'll use it again. So most of us that we know that Google Analytics Universal is end of life, and Google Analytics is forcing everyone to go to GA4. Well, they had to, because Google Analytics Universal was not GDPR compliant. So the regulation has forced them to be more privacy centric. So that's made our jobs a little bit easier, because we're bringing in a tool now that is more privacy centric and is more thinking data first. The way we work is going to have to change, but I think they absolutely can. AWS actually has some wonderful resources that are free and available that talk about the power of data and data literacy. They have some really good resources around data literacy that people could tap into, that they may not even realize is there. That it's not talking about Amazon in particular. It's just data in general. And there's great resources specifically if you're interested in what Google Analytics 4 has done and why and how it's different. There's wonderful resources about that. They really changed their software to make it compliant. I mean, if Google Analytics is not compliant, well, we're all in trouble because we all use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually I could second that, because I just finished last week the course. There's free online courses around GA4, and I just went through those, and it indeed shows you quite a lot of emphasis now on data privacy. So
absolutely,
everyone listening, just Google GA4 tutorial or training, and you'll get into an LMS which will take you through that from beginning to end.
I'll add one thing. I think that there's more innovation to be done there. We are still living in the world of cookies, and cookies, cookies are my nightmare. They're data privacy professionals' nightmares. But there is great innovation going on in several startups moving to cookieless analytics tracking. And I think that is the future. I think that's where, once we get big tools like Google Analytics to go to true cookieless event tracking, then we'll start to see a big shift.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. Good. I also attended. There's another question in the chat, so it's not in the QA box. So I'm going to just read it out to you.
Okay.
This question is from Jean-Paul Karangwa, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And that is, what are the main components of a data-driven decision-making model for an organization? So is there any example you can share?
Well, the way that decisions are made, whether it's a structured decision or an unstructured decision, do typically follow a pattern. There's a resource that you can check out. I didn't mention it here, but it's called the Center for Evidence-Based Management, and they have a lot of resources that they call it one thing. They call it evidence-based management. We call it data-driven decision making. They're the same thing. And there's been a lot, since the 70s in particular, there's been a lot of study about how we as humans make decisions. And there is, even amongst unstructured decisions, and what I mean by that are strategic decisions. They're not operational decisions. These are big decisions that we have to make. We've never encountered them before, and we're trying to figure out a strategy to answer a problem that is new and unique. The big ones, right? Well, we still follow certain steps. We identify the problem. Well, what is that? Why is it even important? Why are we talking about this? And then we look at, well, what are some possible answers? And then you move, and it moves through through these steps. But at some point, you're going to get to data. When you're looking at, well, why would we choose alternative 1 over alternative 2? That's where I think that's where you have to bring in data. And you've got to go do your research. You got to do a little work. You got to go, talk to people. Perhaps if you're looking at a solution for that, onboarding a third-party vendor, a big one, or maybe an event management solution, etc. Go talk to people that are using it. Gather your own data as well as what's available for you to read based upon what's online. But in the past, I think a lot of those situations have been made, those alternatives have been chosen without taking the time to go get the data, because they feel like, the executives feel like, well, we know best. We're going to make a decision here ourselves. Being data-driven, I think it actually takes a bit more time. And you need to slow down your thinking to go look for the data that you need. If anybody's familiar with thinking fast and slow, it's the thinking slow part from Kahneman that we're talking about. We need to slow our thinking down and take the time to go get that data to help us make the best informed decision that we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of also builds on during the lunch break, I had a panel discussion, and basically what was the main consensus of the panel is, if you want to move towards this more data-driven organization, you have a number of different steps. Start with awareness, then more the change management, then the data literacy part, and then they said the last part is patience, because it's
absolutely,
it's kind of exactly what you're saying.
You need to be tenacious and patient.
Correct.
Because there are going to be days, if you pick up this mantle and decide to go with this, you need to be committed to it. And there are going to be days that you're going to feel frustrated. You're going to feel perhaps, oh, I'm never going to get I'm never going to get them to change. You just got to keep plugging away. The world is changing. They will change with us, and there is power in data. We know that. That's why we're here at this conference. We know this. We just need to continue to plug at that and share that message.
Thanks. And I think that on that kind of summary note would be a perfect end of our session today. Suzannah, although it's your first time, I'm super impressed, and I think this was an excellent presentation.
Thank you very much. I think it'll be wonderful if I come back once I finish my own research next year and complete my PhD.
Absolutely.
And see where we end up, see what I've learned. So, that's my goal.
Absolutely. So this is already an open invitation for next year.
Wonderful.
I'll be very pleased to introduce you as Dr. Suzannah by that time.
Oh.
Some changes. The world is changing, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about this. My email is included with the slide deck. Please do not hesitate to either reach out to me via my email, and I'm on LinkedIn. I will talk, as we say, where I come from, which is the South and in the United States. I can talk a dog off a meat truck about data and data culture. So feel free to reach out.
Great. On that note, Suzannah, thank you so much for joining today. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, that there is only one thing left for today's conference, and that is our closing and award ceremony, which will start in a little over 15 minutes. The moment where a lot of you have been waiting for, where we're going to be handing out 3 awards: the Project of the Year, the Practitioner of the Year, and the Student of the Year. So who got the highest marks in terms of their certifications this year. Besides that, we will also announce the winners of the books from Jordan's session yesterday. We will give away the data literacy books, and there's going to be a lucky draw. So join me back in 15 minutes for what will be the close of Big Data Days 2023. Thanks, Suzannah, once again, and I look forward to seeing everyone back in 50 minutes from now.
Thank you very much.